The Road to Enchantment by Kaya McLaren. Narrated by Amy McFadden.
To my parents, it's not easy to raise a spirited child without breaking her spirit. Good job. Thanks for your love, acceptance, encouragement, and faith in me. Chapter 1. Maybe it was the fact my feet hadn't touched real dirt in so long that I suddenly became aware of them when they did. Sure, they had been in sand not that long ago, but sand lets all things pass through it. Water, crabs, and people. Clay doesn't. Clay holds what lands on it. This thought terrified me. I never did like this place, and I sure didn't want to get stuck here. Glittery glass shards from broken bottles littered the side of the remote dirt road. I stood outside the gate and looked over into my mom's world, into my past. Some things were exactly the same. For example, the old 1953 pink Cadillac still poked out of an arroyo in the bull's pasture, like a fossilized dinosaur unearthed by the elements. And by pasture, I did simply mean a large fenced-in area full of sage and not much else. Senor Clackers, my mom's Toro Bravo Spanish fighting bull, had been her answer to a security system, a way to keep the drunks and thieves out, and he had just noticed me, so I knew I had only seconds to make my move. He was roughly 1,500 pounds of pure muscle that rippled under his shiny black fur when he moved, but at the moment, he stood still, his head held high, sniffing the air, his regal horns reaching clear up to the sky. My mom had installed a system of gates so that the bull blocked a narrow section of the driveway when she wanted protection, but kept the bull out of the driveway when she wanted to welcome a visitor or go in or out herself. I quickly crawled over one metal gate and pushed another gate shut, blocking the bull from the driveway and allowing me to walk through safely. Curious, he trotted over to me, his massive testicles swinging back and forth as he did. The characteristic for which Mom had named him. Bull testicles were something I hadn't seen in my 21 years of city life, and now struck me as somewhat obscene, even though rationally I knew that was ridiculous. I took a step back, lacking complete confidence in my mom's aging fencing. Senor Clackers's long horns hooked forward as he snorted through the fence. Mom's two dogs, Mr. Lickers and Slobber Dog, noticed us and began to bark and run toward me jubilantly, as if they had mistaken me for my mom. And I wondered what similarity they saw that caused them confusion. Our frame, our posture, our walk. As they neared, they balked, as if they realized it was not my mom after all. The dogs and I had met twice before, but still, I spoke to them calmly, wondering how protective of my mom's estate they would be. Estate was actually a word far too fancy for what lay before me. I bent down to see which dog was male and which one wasn't, so I could remember which was Mr. Lickers and which was Slobber Dog. They were siblings and looked remarkably alike, built much like blue heelers, with 4 colors of fur all mixed in together, white paws, white stars on their chests, and white stripes on their noses. I let them smell my hand, and then pet each one before I continued my slow walk up the driveway. I didn't know how I was going to find homes for all of my mom's animals. In addition to the bull and the dogs, there were the horses, the donkey, the llama, and the guinea fowl. The livestock would be a pain to sell. But the dogs? No one around here needed 2 more dogs. I looked down at their sad faces and wondered whether the vigils farther up the road would take them back. I scanned the nearly 300 acres, wondering where exactly Mom had fallen off her horse, and why. Maybe a rattlesnake had spooked it. Maybe coyotes or a cougar. Maybe it had been stung by a wasp or a bee. I I would never know. As I continued to walk toward the house I had once shared with my mom, the guinea fowl ran to get out of the way, eventually flying up to low branches on a nearby juniper. Their black feathers with little white polka dots littered the gravel. I picked one up and admired its elegance. Was I really going to catch all of these birds? No. Maybe I could advertise that I would give them away to anyone who would come out and catch them. Since I had been here last, Mom had built a structure into the side of a hill on the other side of the barn. She had told me about it, but I had never seen it. The front was stucco with wooden timbers that poked out above the windows, and a hand-painted sign above the door that read, "The DeVine Winery." Behind it, the 5 acres of grapes Mom and I had planted had filled out, now striping the nearby hillsides with bold green lines, where only small green circles had dotted the landscape not that long ago. A white vinyl couch sat facing the large arroyo where coyotes used to hide, and next to the couch, sun shone through the green glass of an empty wine bottle. And to my left was the house and garage, something between artistic and ramshackle that a friend of my mother's old friend had built out of straw bales, stucco, and salvaged materials. It looked boxy, even with solar panels sitting on the flat roof. The walls were fat, with deep window sills that I had loved to sit in, soaking up sunshine while I did my homework on cold winter days. Over the door was a stained glass window he had salvaged from a church that had burned down, a window depicting the Nativity. It had been damaged, so he'd had to cut off Joseph and the wise men, leaving Mary and her baby alone with the livestock and the angel of the Lord. He had built a large frame around it before he had set it into the wall. Turquoise paint peeled from the wooden door and window frames. Near the door grew oregano, black-eyed Susans, and hollyhocks, an odd combination of survivors. In every direction, it seemed, there was a doorway I was afraid to walk through, not wanting to see the archaeology of my mother's last day. The rag she'd used to disinfect the bags of the goats she had milked that morning, the rake she had used to pick stalls, the pans and buckets that were undoubtedly still in the drying rack, the clothes she hadn't laundered, her hair in the shower drain. At once, a momentary wave of fever and weakness washed over me as my stomach turned. I dropped down on all fours and abruptly threw up. I had been doing this for the last 2 days and chalked it up to grief. I sat back on my knees, looked up at the front door of the home where my mother's absence felt so wrong, where it was finally real in a way it hadn't been until that very moment. Then, overcome by weakness, I laid down on the gravel, rolled over, and looked up at the sky above. It was clear and blue, with only one cloud in it, a large bear that floated in the southeast over the vigil place. A bear. My old best friend Darrel. The sky seemed to be telling me he was coming, and so I shut my eyes and waited. Chapter 2. I was 13, the first and only day I had ever seen a cloud shaped like a cougar in the sky, an animal that sneaks up on you from behind and attacks before you ever see it coming. I had seen it as I rode my bicycle home from the old brick junior high school through the maze of old neighborhoods and into progressively newer ones. Only after I had turned a corner did I notice the very large plume of black smoke coming from the vicinity of my house. As I neared, I could see my mother in the driveway, sitting in a lawn chair roasting something over a flaming mattress. Neighbors peeked out of their suburban ranch homes to monitor the situation, and in the distance, I heard a siren. My mom had an extra lawn chair and marshmallow stick waiting for me when I pulled up on my bike. On the chair sat a bag of peeps, those marshmallow chicks Mom put in my Easter basket every year, even though for years now I had been way too old to be playing along with the Easter bunny. Mom had speared one of the peeps, and something about it was a disturbing and grotesque sight.